Hello, everybody who's here already. I'm planning on hanging out until about 5:05 my time, just to give people some time to join. Get started. You're all as excited as I am. My first time going through the Teams live event. Bear with me if there are issues. Hello. This should be working now. So got about 74 people in the lobby, which is about a third of the number of people that signed up. But that is okay. I imagine more people will be trickling in over time. Specifically, if you're on West Coast, this is right after work. Sorry about that. Okay, so I will just go ahead and get started. You guys should be able to ask questions. I think somebody has already asked a very good question, which is, who is the secret recruiter hiding in here? And we'll find out, I guess, will be the answer. Anyways, so sort of on the same topic, what this topic is or what this talk is and what it's not, I just kind of want to get out of the way. What it's not is any kind of, internal corporate policy. I will not be detailing, actual documents that are about how Microsoft runs or how it works. Not the goal of this, nor will I be sharing official statements about how the recruiting process works by recruiters or how to get an offer, an ultimate checklist. And I will not be giving you things that are 100% fact, because unfortunately, as this is all second or even third-hand information, it's very hard to claim that something actually is fact. So what this talk is, though, is that it is aggregated information that I have spent a long time collecting, and I will be sharing what I have gotten so far. We'll be going over the things that go into getting an offer or not getting an offer. So we'll be going into the process of how offers are created, because that seems to be interesting to a lot of people. We'll go into how to negotiate, which is probably what most of you guys are here for, so I'll be dedicating a little bit more time to that. And this will be a lot of my opinions, which are formed by this aggregated information that I've been working on collecting so far this summer. In answer to questions, are we recording this? Yes, we are recording this. I don't know how to answer and publish at the same time, which is really frustrating. Sorry. How do we connect in case the access cuts off? Click the same link that you used to get here in the first place. It's a bit hard to hear the audio. I'm going to publish that, and if that gets a bunch of upvotes, I will work on this. Yes, this is being recorded, though. I will answer this. Okay. Anyways, continuing onwards. So, first main topic is going to be, what does it actually take to get an offer? This is primarily going to be of interest to people who are still interns, particularly those who may have started more recently, or those who are about halfway through. And so this is stemming from a lot of questions that I've been seeing on the Slack and the Discord, and even some of the internal teams. Wow, I don't like that naming scheme. Anyways, so a lot of these questions that I've been seeing are things like, I didn't finish my project. Am I going to get an offer, or am I completely screwed? And another one was, I finished my project in 3 weeks. Can I just not do anything for the rest of summer? The answer is I wish to that one. And oops, my manager isn't giving me anything to do. My manager is giving me too much to do. My project has no visibility. And this bottom one is actually a bit of a trickier situation. Okay, it seems that people are still trying to call in, so I do just want to say, if you are trying to call in, don't. Just click the link. If you try and call in, it's going to try and get you to join as a presenter, which is not what you want to do, and it would not be beneficial really to anybody here. Okay, so The main things that, so I'll start by addressing the questions because I actually think that that's a better way to give people a general idea. But if you didn't finish your project, can you still get an offer? The answer is yes, absolutely, you can. Your project is actually not 100% related to how offers are given. The reason projects exist is because they're a good way to generally form how much time an intern has, and there is essentially a project is expected to fill your internship. But the people creating those projects are humans too. They can make mistakes. Projects can be way too long. They can be way too short. So just because your project, turns out to be something that realistically would take multiple years or at least a large team of people, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get an offer. So don't freak out if your project is incredibly long or incredibly complex and you don't think that you're going to be able to do it. Similarly to this, there are some projects where, especially in my section of data science, not all projects are actually possible. A very common thing to happen is your manager will come to you and say, hey, we've got some data here. We'd really like to see if we can use this data to do something. And what it may turn out is that that data is just actually useless and that you can't do anything with it. Likewise, in the generic SWE, your project may turn out to just not really be feasible. During your customer interviews, if you're talking to your customers, be it internal or external, it may turn out that they just don't want what you're trying to build. And that's okay. Recognizing that is part of your internship as well. You just need to be communicating that effectively with your manager. And a large part of this is going to come down to communicating effectively with your manager. So similarly, I finished my project in like 3 weeks. Do I even have to try for the rest of the summer? This was an actual question that I did see in one of the Slack channels. I think it got deleted shortly after though, because people were giving them hate, which I felt a little bad for. But the answer is yes, absolutely. Your project can be severely underscoped. My own personal project was, I think, underscoped. Project turned out to only take about 6 weeks. And as much as I wish I could have just gotten paid to do nothing for 6 weeks, unfortunately, that's not quite how that works. And again, this comes down to your internship is not tied to your project as much as you might think. There is a good amount of correlation there, but it's not a one-to-one. And again, it can turn out that your project is too easy, or that it happens to be in a field that you really excel at, and it turns out that you just haven't finished super quickly. If that happens, definitely be communicating that with your manager, something along the lines of, hey, it's looking like I'm going to finish a week or two out, and I don't have anything to do after that. Might be time to start looking into a second project or something. That kind of conversation can be happening. Now, I think most people are near the end of your internships, so that won't really apply to you guys as much, but just something to be aware of. So along similar lines, we have things like my manager isn't giving me anything to do, or my manager is giving me too much to do. So for a bit of background for you guys, my previous internship was at Amazon, and the company culture there is very, very different. One of the things that I experienced, at least, was that your manager will keep giving you work, just more and more of it, until you say no. And a large part of what I ended up learning there was actually how to say no to your manager. And it may seem really scary, but it's actually not that big of a deal. Communication is very important there. If you are being given far too much work, or just work where it's unreasonable for you to do in either the time frame that you're given or at the level that you're expected to perform, you need to be communicating with that. Because it's far better for your manager to hear about it, within an hour of them assigning it to you than 2 weeks down the line when they're expecting results and you don't have any. So that's definitely something to be aware of. hopefully you guys can hear the audio better. I'm trying to speak a little louder. So let me know if it's still coming in a little quiet. I did notice that that comment has more likes now. So that hopefully helps address the issue of my manager's giving me too much work. If that's happening, you really just need to talk to your manager and state, you know, I've got these things going on. You know, I have this much time left in my internship, and these are the things that I believe I can do. If you want me to do this additional thing, that's fine, but we're going to have to deprioritize something else that I'm already doing. So definitely something to mention, because if you kind of let that pile up and don't give it any focus, then what's going to happen is right at the end of your internship, you're going to have not met a bunch of your deliverables, and you won't have talked to your manager ahead of time about that. And so it's going to look pretty bad when they're looking over your report. They're going to see that they gave you 5 things to do and you did 2 of them, and that's not going to look very good. So communicating about that early is definitely better. And if you're nearing the end of your internship and you're feeling like you're not going to meet all of your deliverables, it's not too late. Definitely say something. The sooner, the better. 100%. Cool. Audio is going better. Where will the recording be posted? I'm not sure, actually. I'll toss it on Slack and Discord. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be available to the public, so, because this event is, so I think you'll be able to share it. I did not actually answer, give me 2 seconds. Okay. Cool. And by the way, if you guys have questions while this is going on, feel free to ask them. I do check it fairly frequently. So go for it. Cool, Slack works. My manager is not giving me enough to do. Very similar to the previous answer, you need to be communicating that. Now, I will say the good part about that is if your manager is not giving you a lot to do, then your manager's expectations of you are very low. And this actually is, it's kind of a good thing for you, because it means that you'll be able to exceed their expectations very easily. So I definitely recommend staying on top of what they give you, crank it out, you know, as best you can, and then ask for more work. There is always more work to be done. And if you're in one of those weird situations where there is not more work to be done, then that's more of a higher level issue than something for you. So you're not going to be held against it. You're in the Slack, but not the Discord. Someone share the link. I will be putting it in both places. We'll talk, or can we talk about negotiation regarding start date? Yes, but later. So that we will have negotiation be talked about later in this talk. Cool. And then my project has no visibility. How can I make an impact? So we'll get there. So if your project has no visibility, this is a tricky question, because this is actually like a 2-part situation. I've had a lot of people, or I've heard a lot of people talking about their project, which they feel has no visibility. They feel it has no impact. Personally, I was working on a tool, my first project, I was working on a tool that I knew of exactly 1 person who was even remotely interested in the project being done at all and wasn't my manager. It's not great for morale, I'm going to be real. But at the same time, as I got done and started wrapping things up, there were a whole bunch of demos that were scheduled, and it turns out there are actually a lot of people that were genuinely very interested in the results of my project. So it turns out, so the first part of this is you might feel like your project doesn't have a lot of visibility, but it may turn out that the eyes are just in different places than you expect. Particularly, I see this a lot for people who are working on internal tools, where they feel like their project is not going to have any customers, it's not going to have any business impact. This actually, frankly, is not true. One of the interns I know is working on a program that assists in developers debugging their debugging practices and helps cut down the amount of time that they spend debugging. And while this may seem extremely small, and it is I believe it's only for internal employees, and let's pretend it is for a minute. Even if that seems really small at first, if you're able to save like as little as 10 minutes every year for a given developer at Microsoft, you can actually prorate a developer's expected total compensation to to 10 minutes, and it turns out that 10 minutes of a developer's time is worth approximately, I believe it's $30. So $30 time or per year per developer is actually huge. Very, very, very crazy amount of money, because I mean, $30 among 170 developers is, millions of dollars saved every year. So you may feel like your project has a small amount of impact, but it actually has a large amount. So just to be, just something to be aware of. So I did get a question, am I a secret recruiter? Maybe. So that's pretty much so in general, what it takes to actually get an offer is your manager is going to have some expectations for you, whether it's completing your project or whether it's a given amount that they expect you to learn. Sometimes it's the number of trainings they expect you to do. One of the main things that I recommend doing is I recommend asking about what are your expectations of me? Is there anything I can do better? And this is a very important question that a lot of people tend to miss, is what can I be doing better? Not just can I be doing better, because the answer is always yes. Nobody is perfect, and therefore, by definition, there is a way for them to improve. But it's important to see what your manager actually feels about your performance. And if they give you a generic, nope, you seem to be doing, or I can't think of anything right now, you seem to be doing good, that's a really good sign. So I wouldn't freak out about that. Now, I will just pause for about 2 minutes for people to ask questions on this section, because I am going to speed over to negotiation and where offers come from. Yeah, so that's a good feedback that I forgot to mention. Somebody just mentioned that managers do typically have to pitch an intern project in front of a committee, at least your first one. The second one can kind of come from wherever. But that committee does actually have to approve it for most teams. So that would mean that at least there is somebody, who is interested in your project. So there is guaranteed to be some amount of interest there. What would you recommend asking your manager in a final Connect meeting? Personally, I would always ask them for feedback on my performance and, what could I have done better in the future? And I know that may seem counterintuitive when you're trying to get them to write a whole bunch of nice things, but when you ask somebody what you can do better, they're going to think about all of your actions. It's actually going to bring up a lot of the good things that you did. And as an added bonus, you'll also get to hear the handful of things that you can improve upon. So for me, one of the things that I need to improve upon is I really got to stop letting secrets get into my code. This has happened at least twice during the internship, and fortunately both times it was at the beginning, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but definitely something I need to be watching or being aware of. So definitely recommend asking what you can do better. Other things to ask, sort of like, is there anything special that I should be doing at the end of this internship? Because your manager is going to have more insight on your team than anybody else that you talk to, except for maybe your skip. And that insight is very, very important. As much as I wish I could just tell you everything about your team, I can't, because Microsoft is just such a huge company. Everybody has these different teams, and they have different, different structures and the different ways that they work. Maybe your manager really wants to stay in touch with you afterwards. So, that's definitely the kind of thing that you want to be asking is what should I be doing, as this, in my final few days? What would you recommend doing in the final few days? And your manager may, say something along the lines of nothing, just chill out, have fun, finish up some documentation, and you're good. And if that's the case, then that's the case. Yes, Microsoft does love growth. So if you're constantly taking that feedback, it's not just hearing the feedback. You want to actually take that feedback and you want to try and actually incorporate it. It doesn't do a whole lot of good if you're just like asking what can I do better and then not doing anything better. All right, so the questions seem to have slowed down, so I'm going to move on to the next target. So there's actually two parts to negotiation or to an offer. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but there are two parts to an offer. And the two parts are as follows. The first one is, do you get an offer? And it's literally just a yes or no question. And that's typically pitched to your manager, and that's primarily your manager's feedback that's actually going to be the one determining whether or not you get recommended for an offer. Now, just because your manager recommends you for an offer does not actually mean that you will get an offer 100%. It's very strongly correlated, but not 100%. And the reason here is that there are headcount issues in some orgs that I have heard of. There are budget factors. There can be other limitations, but the majority of the time, if your manager recommends you to get an offer, you will probably get an offer. The second part is essentially a measure of your impact, and this kind of comes back to that previous question of, how much of an impact am I making? It's actually not based on your project. The impact is like, how much of an impact on your project did you make? If you were the only one working on your project and you really, took charge of talking to customers, building the project, publishing the project, working with the integration teams to really integrate it, that's going to speak volumes for the amount of impact that you personally made on the project. Whereas if you were, if you were the only person on the team, but you were kind of roping in a bunch of other people to help do things for you, that may speak to less of an impact. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for help, because you absolutely should. One of the main things that I've heard is, oh, well, I need to be doing, more work for myself. And that's not actually true. And the reason there is because if you're going to spend 2 hours doing something where that could be done in 2 minutes if you just ask somebody for help, they would much prefer you ask somebody for help. That's a better use of company money and your time, because you can be spending the rest of that 1 hour and 40 or 58 minutes doing something more productive. So, ask for help when it's needed, but make sure that you are taking charge and owning your project. So that's how they measure impact. And so if you're on if your project involves working with 10 other developers on the same thing, you might be saying, oh, well, I'm super low impact. That's not necessarily true, right? If you're staying on top, if you're owning the segments of the project that you've been assigned, the issues that you have, and you're really taking charge of them, making sure that they're, you're staying on top of the section of the project that you've been assigned, that's really important, and that's going to work. So I am going to take 2 seconds to answer some of the questions. Are offers being reduced or compensation lowered from COVID? I don't know. It doesn't seem to be much, if at all, but I don't know. Sorry. Do you know how the team change process works out of your org? Or do you know if it works this summer? How should I go about finding teams with headcount? We'll cover that later. Are offers being reduced or compensation lowered from COVID? Same question again, I think. I don't know, but probably not. Or at least not much. I do think they're being adjusted slightly, but not a huge amount. So yes, there is so the 2 parts here are, do you get an offer and how much impact did you actually have? Yeah, so that's the 2 parts. So I do have one more question here. Usually we are given a deadline by which we should respond whether to accept the offer. How likely will Microsoft rescind your offer before you make a decision, especially under the impact of COVID? In general, if you're given a deadline, make sure you meet that deadline. There's an asterisk there, which has to do with college recruitment policies, which we'll cover in a little bit during negotiation. But in general, if they give you a deadline, if they say, hey, you really need to respond to this offer in 2 weeks, make sure you've responded to it within 2 weeks. At the very least, let them know of a college recruitment deadline. But again, we'll cover that in a minute. So they're not going to rescind your offer before then, unless it turned out that you were actually lying or didn't do as well as you thought you did. Not exactly sure. So the next step is negotiation. Everybody likes money. How do we make sure that we're getting more money, as much money as we can, from a company which is currently worth about $1.6 trillion? That's right, actually, Microsoft, despite only breaching the $1 trillion Mark, I believe less than a year ago, actually, about 6 months ago, I think, or no, it's more than 6 months now. It's probably closer to 7 or 8. But despite breaching it relatively recently, they're already worth about 1.6 trillion. Crazy, huh? Anyways, my point from this graph is do not be afraid to ask for more money. It's not like you're robbing from the poor. This is one of the top 4 wealthiest companies in the world, at least last time I checked. Probably still is, frankly. It's up there with, I believe it's Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and I want to say Google, but it could be something else. I don't actually know the 4th one. Anyways, so yeah, this is the part we were waiting for. Yep. So negotiation. What goes into negotiation? So I'll start off with the thing that most people want to know, which is how do I most effectively negotiate? So there are 2 primary ways to negotiate, and this is information that I've heard from various sources, but some of it has been at least partially verified by a recruiter, and this was because it actually makes their jobs easier as well as your job easier because you have a common interest, and the common interest is being done with negotiations as fast as possible. So if you guys can come to a agreement sooner, then it's better for both of you. So the first of 2 ways is to have a competing offer, and this is obviously no-brainer. Yes, having a competing offer is great because you can say, well, you're giving me X amount, but this other company is giving me, Y amount, and I really like you guys, but I would really prefer Y amount. Can you guys at least match this? That's a really good way. It's a really effective way because it gives them a target and they can actually say yes or no, or no, but we can get really close. We can do this. Is that okay? And that actually turns out to be very, very effective. And one of the main reasons it's effective is not actually because you have a competing offer and it shows that you can go somewhere else. By definition, guys, if you can work at Microsoft, you can go somewhere else. They know that you have market potential to move elsewhere. So it actually is not going to be quite as important as you might think. What's really important about it is having the numbers, right? Like, we're not going to kid. Microsoft is one of the hardest tech companies to actually get a job at. If you can get a job at Microsoft, you can go and find other competing offers from other places. They know that they're not going to keep you here, just because you don't have any other offers at the exact moment. So I wouldn't worry about that. But it is useful because they get actual numbers that they can say, okay, well, this is what this is what this person actually wants. And this gets into my the second way of doing this, which is just actually giving them a target, saying, I'm really, I thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate, this offer. However, I feel I have contributed at these levels. Here are my reasons, and I would really prefer to see an offer with the following values, and actually put numbers, right? If you got 120,000 in stock, but you really feel like you really performed well, and you want to be moved up to 150 in stock, which we did actually see last year. So you can actually say, I really would like to have an offer that includes 150,000 in stock. My manager spoke well about me. My team spoke well about me. My project had a large amount of impact. This is how much I would like. And that gives them the same thing, actually, that the competing offer does. It gives them an actual number, a target value that they can go to, that they can go back to the team with and say, can we actually do this, yes or no? Which makes things very, very simple. But I'm going to pause here for just a minute because we do have a bunch of questions. If I have 1 month to make a decision, when should I start negotiating if I only want to make a decision close to the deadline? So you really don't want to wait until the final 2 weeks to negotiate. This is advice that's been given to me actually by recruiters, as well as just sort of generic advice. And the reason there is that it can be recruiters are going to get more busy, are going to get busier as they get more people to negotiate with and to talk to, which means that your responses may start getting dragged out because you've got to realize that the recruiter is not going to be the one who's approving your negotiation, on the spot. They have to go talk to the team, and we'll be talking about the team in a minute, but they have to go talk to the team and get that approved, and then they have to come back to you. And even already, it's starting to take over a week in some situations for those talks to happen. So you definitely don't want to be pushing this off until the final 2 weeks. So I would recommend starting at least 2 weeks ahead of time in terms of when to start your negotiations if you want to try and accept at the last possible second. Second question, is it better to negotiate stock this year or bonus since stock is worth less this year or due to COVID? I wonder if they prefer to give one over the other. Kind of comes down to preference. And so it seems at least that they haven't budged much on stock this year, which is kind of interesting, but we also have a very limited number of data points to go from, as opposed to last year's data where we had about something like 170 entries. Most of them had negotiations. We currently have 200 entries, over 200 entries, but most of them do not have their post-negotiation numbers. And the ones that we do have seen more of a movement on bonus, which is interesting, but also good to know. So in general, companies are going to be more willing to give you stock. And the reason being is that so for some companies, they're actually going to be picking up in essentially internal shares, which they don't have to buy, they can just give you. I don't believe that's the case at Microsoft. I believe Microsoft actually buys them off the public market, but I could be wrong there. Please don't quote me on that. I'm not even going to pretend that I know what I'm talking about there. But anyways, the point is it's a set number, and it means that your compensation could go up if the stock improves, because the stock is purchased on the 15th of the month that you start, I want to say. Sounds right, I think. So it's purchased on the 15th of the month that you start, and so essentially it means that they're going to purchase $120 or $120,000 or whatever it is in shares of Microsoft on that date. And then as the stock goes up or down, that amount of money that you will get paid over those quarters in your divestment cycle will either grow or shrink. Whereas bonus is going to be upfront very soon, but will not grow or shrink. So as to say which one is better, that's kind of personal preference. They definitely seem more willing to budge on bonus this year, but we don't have a lot of data, so I wouldn't think too hard about either way. Next question. My manager said he thinks my recruiter, my manager said he thinks he and my recruiter have come up with, in his opinion, a really good offer, which I haven't received yet. I was confused because it seems the offer seems pretty standard across new grads. This is true. Are the numbers my manager and recruiter came up with the same, or same that is presented to me in my initial offer, or do they lower it and expect you to negotiate up? Oh boy, so this is actually like 2 or 3 questions in the same go. So the numbers that your recruiter and management came up with, you will most likely be given a standard offer in general. That's not to say that you definitely will be, but you will most likely be given a standard offer. Yes, these things can be adjusted, but I wouldn't count on it a whole bunch. Especially if you're level 59, there really is no variance in offer. And I'll get to what I mean about 60 in a minute. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. What types of competing offer actually helps? Should it pay more, etc.? Yes, definitely it should offer more than Microsoft. Otherwise, they know that you're not going to most likely accept it unless something, and there's an asterisk here. If so you're going to hear a lot of times people say, this is X, Y, and Z is non-negotiable. That's horseshit. I've heard that a couple of times. It's never actually been true. One of the things that you're going to hear is non-negotiable is location. We've actually had some people previous years negotiate location, and I happen to know somebody this year who did negotiate location and hasn't put it on the form. I'm not sure why. I'm pestering them. Trust me, I'll get there eventually. But anyways, location is negotiable. So if your competing offer pays less, but is in a location that you really want to be in, and your location is what's most important to you, definitely show it. But your competing offer should actually offer something that you want and Microsoft is not already giving you. Otherwise, it's essentially useless because it's just objectively a worse offer. So I hope that helps. what if your competing offer is lower than Microsoft's? I think that's the same question. So I'm just going to dismiss that. How helpful could a competing offer be if your salary is less at the other company? I think I already covered that. Where can we see data? This data from last year you are referring to? Oh my, okay. Give me 20 seconds. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Let's see. Okay, here is the offer from, or the offers from, offer info from this year. I will be posting this in, I guess, the Q&A. There. Offer from last year is here. And that also includes 2018, so just something to be aware of. I was not involved in the 2019, or well, I wasn't involved in the 2018, and the 2019, the only thing I really did was summary. So share presentation. Yes, okay. Just check and make sure that we are actually live. No, we are not. There we go. So yeah. Okay. Let's see. So where was I? Right, questions. Oh wow, 16 questions. Okay, so I think that answers that question. If you don't have a competing offer, what is reasonable to ask for? This is actually why the form exists. It's going to depend on how well you think you did, as well as what the actual ranges for offers seem to be. So one of the main reasons that I have this form and we're collecting this data to see what the range of offers actually are, which is, it's an important step because this sort of gives you an idea of what the upper limit is. Like, for example, last year, we determined effectively that the upper level of offers for, I believe it was L59, was 150 in stock and 75 in bonus, which we haven't seen anything close to this year, but those were also super rare last year, and we just don't have a lot of post-negotiation data so far. So yeah, again, just reminding, don't try and call in. I cannot let you join if you call in, because it'll try and have you join as a presenter. If you don't have a competing, all right, already answered that. So yeah, and anyways, to sort of finish answering that question, it depends on what stock we end up seeing and what bonuses we end up seeing and how well you think you did in comparison to your peers. If you did average, take a look at what the average negotiation is, which typically is about 10 to 20K on top of your starting. For the record, I have actually yet to see anybody be told no in negotiation. So I highly recommend that everybody negotiate. It seems you will just get 10K on top of your bonus pretty much in general if you feel that you did well and you write a decent enough email. If you're looking to get advice on emails, there are plenty of templates, and I believe people are talking about it on both Slack and Discord, so feel free to post there. What if you countered and your recruiter has not responded, but the deadline is coming up? Email them again, especially if the deadline's coming up. Just say, hey, you know, this is what I actually want. Can you please give me a reply to this so I can choose whether to, so I can decide my future at Microsoft, you know, however you best want to word that. Definitely, that's something that you need to actually share. So don't be afraid to email them again, especially if your deadline is coming up. How do you know how much to negotiate? Something reasonable but not ridiculously high. In general, if you're asking for if you're like an L59 and you're asking for anything above like 175 or like 100, and if you're asking for anything like above 200, that's ridiculous. So if you're an L59, I think the highest stock we saw completely last year was 180, I want to say. Could have been 170. I don't actually know. You can check the form. But in general, if you asked the highest that they got from last year or the highest you see on the sheet, you'll be okay. Worst comes to worst, they'll say no. Something that's like ridiculous and insulting would be like double what you currently have without a very good explanation for it. So you will notice that there was a person on the sheet who did negotiate from a L59 to an L61, which resulted in their salary increasing by, I believe, $22,500 a year. And it turned out what happened is that the recruiter did not know that they had 5 years industry experience. So once they found out, they were like, oh, yeah, of course, you've got to move to 61 because 5 years industry experience realistically should be getting you at least L61, as long as it's relevant. So I think that kind of answers those questions. Is there like an X percentage? Not sure what the context is there. If you mean like X percentage above the starting, based on last year, it seems to be about 35%, 40%. I'm not sure if I'm doing the head math right. I think the highest we saw was 50% above the starting. So yeah. Can you negotiate base salary or stock and bonuses? Finally, somebody asked this question. Okay, cool. So there's actually been a lot of misinformation fluttering around about this. The one that I've heard repeated over and over and over and over and over again is base salary is non-negotiable. This is false. This is only true for level 59. And that's probably why it's everywhere. It's because most people are getting L59 offers, but not everybody. So L59, from everything that I've heard, absolutely just is not negotiable pretty much in general. If you did well enough that you should be negotiating above starting salary in 59, they'll just promote you to 60. And within 60 and all higher levels, there is actually a salary band. And that band is sort of like how you did based on performance. You'll fall somewhere within that band. And the low ends of any given band will overlap with the high ends of the band below it and vice versa. So if you are a very high paid L60, you might be paid more than a very low paid L61. Just something to be aware of. So in general, though, don't try and negotiate for salary. They are much less willing to give it than stock or bonuses. But if it's truly important to you, then go ahead, give it a shot. Again, worst comes to worst, they'll just say no, as long as you're not asking for something absolutely ridiculous. If actual just money is important to you, because you may not care about stocks, bonuses, or salary, you just want more money, they will usually give you a number, and that number will be labeled TC, which is short for total compensation. And that amount of money is essentially, if you were to split your stock over the 4 years and your bonus over the 4 years, how much money would you be getting in total every year? And for a base L59, I think it comes out to something like 150 something, 170 something. I don't actually remember. But you can actually put a target on that number as well. You can say, you know, I was really looking for a total compensation package of about $200,000 a year, which is, you know, high, but not impossible. And so the point is, you can actually do all these tactics, but just with total compensation instead of, you know, breaking it down to smaller pieces. Because if those smaller pieces are not important to you, then they're not important to you, and that's fine. Should you wait until you get your offer before negotiating, or should you mention it in your final connect with your recruiter? Again, this kind of comes down to the timing thing. Definitely, you don't have to wait until you get your final offer. Absolutely not, because really, final offers are more of like, oftentimes they are more of like just an official, yeah, we've already negotiated ahead of time. This is just I'm gonna give it to you. We're not gonna talk about it. You're just gonna sign it. We're done. But not always. But a lot of times recruiters prefer to not have to go through all that documentation twice, and so they'll typically just talk to you about it in your final connect. If you express interest, something along the lines of, yeah, I'm going to take a look at my options, and I look forward to you know, reaching back out to you. They will often refrain from actually giving you a final offer and instead try and, oh my gosh, 31 questions. Give me a minute. They'll refrain from giving you a final offer and instead try and negotiate with you over email until you guys kind of settle on an offer, at which point they will send one to you. So yeah. Is it worth trying to negotiate based on a hypothetical offer? I have a Facebook internship in the fall. You can try, but I think I've kind of already covered, you know, negotiation based on offers. The reason that they like to negotiate based on offers is because of money, right? So you can always just look up how much, you know, Facebook would actually offer you at the end of your internship for a full-time position and just say, you know, hey, I'm very likely to get an offer from Facebook. It would have these numbers. If you guys are able to match this, I'll sign right now, you know, no further negotiation required, and they'll probably give it to you. Is it worth giving my recruiter my walkaway value that I'd cancel? Yes, absolutely. This is kind of what I was saying about the two strategies. Absolutely. If you can say, hey, I will cancel all of my interviews if you can give me this exact total compensation, they love that because they can actually just go to their team and say, hey, if we can offer this amount of money, we've got a person. And that's really easy for everybody. So yes, absolutely. That is fitting into what I mentioned. Lucky the people starting in March then. Well, yes, that is true. People who pretty much started even like a year ago, Microsoft stock has, I believe, like doubled in the last year and a half. So they're doing very well, yes. Why did that question not go away? I have an answer for the question about the manager said competitive offer. The manager, your recruiter, and your skip come up with the highest amount. Yeah, you have to negotiate to it. Yeah. That's actually pretty interesting. I'm going to publish that because I actually cannot confirm or deny that because I just don't know. But I do know that there is a like soft max on what you can negotiate to, but it is always soft because, as I mentioned, there could be, you know, just above and beyond circumstances that they didn't know about, such as having 5 years previous experience that everybody just kind of forgot to mention. Is stock taxed the same way as salary? No, but this isn't a, I don't really want to get into the financials of how stock is taxed or how taxes are even done. It's not really the point of this, but at a super high level, the amount of stock that you're given is going to be taxed as income. The amount of gains will be taxed as, I believe, stock gains, but I'm not 100% sure on this. This isn't really my strong point. There are other people on the Discord and Slack that are far better suited to answer this than I am. So I'll publish that and just sort of let the chat answer that. My recruiter said I got the highest stocks possible, 120K, and so I can't negotiate. How do you bring up negotiating stocks? Just in general, I wouldn't mention the fact that they got it the highest possible. If you really want to negotiate stock, just sort of mention, hey, you know, I'd really appreciate, or I think sort of the same template email. Hey, you know, I think I did decently well. Here are my commendations, whatever. I would really appreciate, you know, 130 in stock. You can do that, but if they're really against negotiating stock, you can always just say, I would like this much in total compensation, and then let them figure out how they want to give it to you. There's always more money on the table. Yes, that's true. Always more money on the table. Is offer being revoked a possible risk? I see this question a lot. In general, no. If you're being respectful and you're not threatening to walk away, like, do not do a, you know, if you won't give me this, I'm not taking it. Don't do that. That's really bad. It makes you look like a jerk, and in general, it makes you look like you're not very interested. So one of the tricks here is to keep looking like you're interested without actually like fully committing. So definitely don't do that, and don't ask for $400,000 a year unless you're like an L. What the hell is that? Like 66, I think. I think 65 gets around 400K total comp. Probably 64 too, actually. 400K is not that high. Anyways, do they ask to show the offer letter for a competing offer? They'll typically ask to show at least the dollar amounts. So definitely don't lie about having an offer if you don't actually have an offer. Yeah, that one's kind of straight. Should we wait to start negotiations until we have a competing offer? If you have a late deadline of like November, what should these late for these late deadlines? What do you recommend the latest we start negotiating? I think I already mentioned. Definitely don't wait until less than 2 weeks before the end or the end of your negotiation period. Yeah, so if you have a competing offer, and if you have a longer deadline, I would wait until you get the information that you feel you need to negotiate, and at that point, just sort of go for it. You know, negotiate based on the information, right? So if you have a longer deadline, sort of plan out the information that you want to have for negotiation, get that information ready, and then use that in your negotiation once you have it. So yeah. Is there a policy not to vote on stocks this year? No clue. Is there a sign-on bonus? Doesn't seem so. I'm not sure why. I've seen a bunch of theories going around about this. One of them was like, yeah, they were taking the $5,000 and then just, you know, bouncing, taking a different offer. Thing is, I highly doubt that's the case because you actually had to give the $5,000 back if you essentially reneged on the offer. So I think it's like if you quit within 6 months of starting, you had to give back your signing bonus. So I highly doubt that's the case, but it is possible, and I just don't know, so I'm not going to claim I do. Can I explain the concept of levels, 59, 60, etc.? Yes. Can I add a median to the docs? Yes. Can you DM me and remind me to do this? Because I do want to do that, but I kind of forget. But I'm going to forget. Anyways, the concept of levels is actually fairly simple, and it's the same at actually a lot of tech companies, especially the big ones. I actually forget what Facebook's system is, but I know they have one. Microsoft's is like 59, 60, 61, all the way up through, I believe, 69, I want to say. I think 70 is like VP or something. I don't quote me on the higher ones. I don't actually know because they're not really relevant to my stage in the career. But yeah, so 59 is where most college grads are going to start. I talk a lot about 60 because I'm a master's student and in data science, and they tend to give higher offers, but even still, most of us are going to start in 59. That's just kind of an objective fact. 59 is, at least internally, from the vibe I've been getting, is seen as a probation level. So most people don't stay at 59 very long. So essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that you actually, you do know how to work as part of a team in a larger culture, and in general know what you're doing. So most people get out of 59 relatively quickly. I would say a year and a half is, I believe, about the median. A year to a year and a half, but it's usually fairly quick that you get out of 59. So 59 and 60 are your SWE 1 or your data science 1, or I'm not sure if PM follows the same numbering system, but if you hear somebody refer to them as a SWE 1, that means they're either 59 or 60. 61 and 62 is SWE 2 or a data science 2. Above that is, I believe, senior, and then above, which is 63 and 64. Above that is principal, which is 65 and 66. And above that, you start getting into other things. I'm actually not sure on the principal. I think that's it, though. But yeah, the point is it keeps going up. And every two levels, you get like a title change, essentially. In general, you're going to see most of the big bonuses come from a title change, but not actually always. So a promotion actually works very similar to getting a return offer from an internship, where they have a slider. There will be a, do I recommend this person for a promotion? And then they'll have a slider on like impact, like how much impact did this person have? Worth mentioning that your manager essentially just advises how much impact they believe you had. They actually do not get to recommend monetary amounts for you. So just saying. So hopefully that explains the concept of the levels. At Amazon, there instead of 59, there's L4, which is essentially Microsoft's equivalent of 59 and 60. There's an L5, which is 61 and 62. There's an L6, which is essentially the senior role, which is 63 and 4. And then there's they're in L7? I kind of forget. I think there's L7. They skip one number. I think it's L8. There are no L8s. So I think there's L7 and then it goes to L9. Anyways, I don't know why they skipped the number. Don't ask. So I hope that answers that question. What if you countered your recruiters not responding to deadlines coming up? Already answered that. Or how would you advise negotiation for people who only have 2 weeks to accept their offer? Send the email out pretty much the day you get the offer, or like the morning after. Definitely start the process ASAP. But other than that, not much change. I only have 2 weeks to accept an offer. Should I wait a while to negotiate? No. Especially if you don't think you're going to get any competing offers. L59, L60, L61, just joined late, has already been discussed. It has as of about 30 seconds ago, but you sent this message almost 15 minutes ago, so hopefully you were there. If I'll be an intern next year, I'll know I only have 2 weeks to accept. How should I prepare? I guess I'll cover this now. Well, the reason that some people only have 2 weeks while other people have months is it has to do with university deadlines. Some universities have recruitment policies, which essentially state that if a college wants to recruit on your campus, they must give at least until some date for interns to accept their offers, or previous interns to accept their offers. And at my own personal school, which is the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, we have November 1st. A lot of schools have around, October 31st, November 1st. I actually didn't even know my school had that policy until about 2 or 3 months ago, when one of my other classmates mentioned it. So highly, 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 highly recommend checking your school's website. Call your recruiting or your recruiting office at your school. Oftentimes, schools do have like a recruitment help office. You guys probably do have a policy and you just don't know about it. Like I've seen this a lot. Most schools, especially if they're not a small school, have a policy, 100%. If you're a small school, you might not. But so if you've got more than a year, try and get your school to adopt a policy, actually. So if you know that you're going to be interning next summer and you want more than 2 weeks, push your school to adopt a policy. A lot of times they either don't know it's a thing or just, don't realize that it would actually be useful. So that's what I would recommend. Otherwise, I would recommend apply for your competing offers early, perhaps when you start your internship in June or May, and try and get those offers soon. Other than that, same advice that I've already given. My offer contains like a signing bonus, but it looks more like a starting bonus since it's going to be dispersed at my start date instead of when I saw. Yeah, that's a start bonus. They've been wording their things really weirdly this year. It seems that nobody's actually getting signing bonuses. It seems they're all starting bonuses because they're given to you on your start date. I don't think it's really worth bringing up with the recruiter unless you really want a signing bonus, in which case that's just part of standard negotiations. Are negotiations harder in the off-peak season? Not really. Not really. How often do people negotiate L59, L60 successfully? Not super common, but it does happen. So if you perform super, super, super well as a and you really don't feel that you should be an L59, you can try and go for it. Yeah. In general, though, the reason that happens is because people ask for compensation levels that can't be given to a 59, because as I mentioned, 59 is typically fairly strict in how it works in terms of bands. So they typically will get promoted to 60 so that they can actually be given those starting values. Can you get an increase in both stock and bonus, or is it just one or the other? Yes, you can get both. And if you want to see what they pick, just ask for an increase in total compensation and let them do the picking. Is it possible to increase salary? Is that non-negotiable? I think I already covered this. For 50, pretty much from everything I've heard is not really something I've ever seen them budge on, but for other levels, they've budged pretty much every year. What are the bands for L60? I don't know. Should we negotiate even if we were getting a return offer as an intern? I've heard we shouldn't. I don't know why people are saying you shouldn't. To me, that's really weird and doesn't make any sense. I have seen return intern offers negotiated successfully. Granted, it's only been about $200 to $300, maybe $400 per month higher than what they previously got. But I have seen it done successfully. So I don't know why I don't know how it could hurt you. They're certainly not gonna renege your negotiation because you asked for a little bit more. So that's kind of a ridiculous argument that I've seen. I've heard signing bonuses are not being given out this year. Do you have any info on this? I think I already mentioned it. No, I don't. I don't know why they're not. Yeah. Is it better to negotiate over phone or email? Probably email, unless you are really good at talking, because they are really good at talking and they will be really good at talking you down. So unless you believe that you are better at talking than a seasoned recruiter, I would recommend doing email. Is there more than one preferred way of negotiating? Is one way more preferred separately versus negotiating total compensation? If you want flexibility, or if you don't care, definitely total compensation will be better because it's actually easier for the recruiter because the recruiter just says, look, this guy just wants more money, or this person just wants more money. They want this much money. Can we give them this much money? And the answer is more likely to be yes, because they can pull from the different because it turns out that actually your stock versus your bonus versus your salary, actually none of them come from the same budgets, which is really interesting, but a neat little tidbit of information I found out. It seems that almost none of them come from the same budgets, with the exception of your salary and your bonus sometimes come from the same budget. But stock comes from a completely separate thing. So in answer to your question, giving more total compensation gives the recruiter more freedom to try and find you an offer that fits better. So definitely that. Do teams have limits on how many people in each level? Yes, but it doesn't really apply between 59 and 60. That would just be total headcount, really. That mainly comes into play with promotions, which if people are really interested in that, I can schedule like I guess a second talk for that, but not really something I was planning on talking today. So at least in terms of 59 and 60, this does not really apply to you. No, they don't really have limits on people in each level other than just generic headcount. Do you add the 10% yearly bonus while computing total compensation? I don't know. I actually don't know. It'll depend on what, I mean, they'll tell you total compensation in your offer letter usually, or when you're talking to the recruiter. And so then you can just kind of like reverse the math and figure out if they included the 10% yearly bonus. But I want to say no, because it's not technically a guarantee. But I don't know. How does the stock bonus stuff work? You don't understand it. Okay, that's fine. So stock, essentially, they will buy X amount of money worth of stock on the 15th of the month that you join. So if most people are getting 120,000 in stock, that means that on the 15th of the month that you join, you will get 120,000 in stock, or they will buy 120,000 in stock. They will not give it to you immediately. You have a 3.5-year divestment cycle, meaning they will give you that stock. They will transfer ownership of those shares that they bought to you over the course of that cycle, which would be 6 months from your start date, 1.5 years from your start date, 2.5 years from your start date, and 3.5 years from your start date. That's the divestment cycle, and I believe it is 25% at each divestment point every time, which is much better than other companies like Amazon, who are fairly predatory. It's, I believe, 5%, 10%, 25%, and 40%. Is their divestment schedule. So it's very back-weighted essentially to make sure that you stay all 4 years. But that's essentially how the stock bonus works. So what that means is that if you start and Microsoft stock is worth $200, they're going to buy $120 or $1,000 of Microsoft shares at $200. They're going to give it to you 1/4 of that total amount at a time over the course of 3.5 years, and they'll be giving, the quarter in terms of the number of shares, meaning if the share price triples the day after they buy it, congratulations, you're not going to be getting $30,000 a month, you're going to be getting 90, or $30,000 per cycle, you're going to be getting 90. So but on the flip side, if your stock price, or if the stock price tanks the day after they buy it, you're kind of SOL, and that just sucks. You can choose to either sell the stock immediately or hold on to it. At that point, it's just a share that you own. If you want to learn more about the stock market, the Slack or Discord both have channels about finance, and both have very active people who are very smart. So ask them. Can we negotiate salary for return internships? Already covered this. Would you recommend negotiating on email or phone? Covered this too. Email. If I received a written offer, does that mean I received a final offer? It's not negotiable. No. Even if you do get a written offer and it is a quote unquote final offer, that doesn't, if you haven't negotiated already, you can still try and negotiate. Definitely do not try and negotiate twice. If you toss a number up and they accept it, don't then toss a higher number up. That's seen as really scummy and really bad. Don't do that. But if you haven't negotiated yet and they give you a thing in writing, probably just means that they didn't expect you to negotiate. So you definitely have the ability to negotiate there. Especially if you have 2 months to accept or deny it. Who approves the requested negotiation numbers sent out to the recruiter? The team. In answer to your question, I've gotten a lot of mixed messages on this, and it seems that nobody actually really knows. And I don't just mean interns. It seems that it also is kind of internal too. So most of what it is, the recruiter is given a amount that they are essentially a range that they are able to work in fairly freely. And that range is given to the recruiter by the recruiter's manager. Those are called, I want to say, oh, I forget what the position is. I heard it mentioned once and I told myself I'd remember it, but I forget. Anyways, this is like a magical person who's like above the recruiters. They typically define those ranges. If you try to exceed, or if you are within that range, the recruiter just turns around, asks that person, hey, this is okay, right? And they go, yep, that's okay. Or they may not even have to ask. They might just say yeah or no, based on how they feel from your connects. If you make claims like, oh, my team really liked me, and they don't feel that matches up with the feedback they've gotten, they might actually turn around and go talk to your team to request more information to see if they actually do agree with what you said. So yeah. Just something to be aware of there as well. Wow, my mouth is getting really dry and I don't have any water. That's unfortunate. 2 seconds. Okay, better now. What was I saying? Who accrues? Right. So if you're asking for a number that's way above that, or that's above that range, because of an exceeding circumstance, such as that guy that had 5 years previous experience, that will typically they'll have to turn around and talk to your manager or your skip, or both. I'm actually not 100% sure who they talk to there, but they do have to go back to people in your org and your team to make sure that they even have the head count for a much higher level. So typically for a level change, they do have to go back and talk to your team. So I hope that answers your question. My recruiter said explicitly in an email that I need to start within 90 days of graduation. I know it's possible to extend further than that, but how do I do so? Email, explain your reasoning, pull the COVID card. It does work. Furthermore, let's say I do indeed successfully push that start date. Can I then turn around and start early if I choose to do so later on? Yeah, probably. Definitely don't try and change your start date like within like a month or 2 of starting, unless another pandemic level disaster hits. Typically, those kinds of decisions need to be made early because they actually have to start putting your stuff through the system. They have to request your hardware. They have to find desk space for you, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely make sure that you're going to ask. If you're going to turn around like that, I'd try and make sure that you're asking the second time at least 2 months before your start date. Yeah. So I've heard when you join back, you don't necessarily join the same team. True. Why? Your manager and skip decide to play, because usually you're under the same skip oftentimes, but not necessarily under the same manager. If you're not necessarily under the same skip either, then typically it's going to be a combination of your manager, the manager who's going to be your manager, and your skip, all kind of deciding to play. Why does that happen? I don't know. Go ask HR. That's just kind of what they decided. Can this advice apply to internship negotiations as well? Yes. I think I already answered that question. Wow, I'm starting to get 20 minutes behind these questions. Yikes. I got 25K bonus in my offer, and I don't have competing but I have really good reviews on my connects. And should I be asking for an additional 10 or 20 to 25K on my bonus? Yeah, no, that would be fine. You can ask for, I mean, especially we've been seeing like 45, 50,000 starting bonuses. You can always ask. They'll say, hey, maybe we can do 40. We can't do 45 or we can't do 50, but we can do 40 probably. Especially if you do actually have really good reviews in your connects, definitely bring that up. Say that you feel your performance, you deserve better. When asking for total compensation 200,000, do they also divide the signing bonus in 4? Yes. If my school has a policy for later deadlines than November 1st, can I ask them to move the offer deadline? Yes. Actually, not only can you ask them to move the offer deadline, if they refuse, you can remind them that they can actually be banned from recruiting on campus, which is actually a huge deal for a lot of companies. So definitely make sure that you're either able to link a source for your for that date. And I wouldn't start out with a threat, by the way. Definitely don't start out with a threat. But say, hey, my university has a policy, and they will respect your university's policy. Now, I have seen a handful of situations where the university's policy has been like February, and they've just sometimes had to straight up say, listen, we understand that you've got a February deadline. We actually cannot deal with that deadline. We need to know by like November. Typically, November should be okay. But that's very rare. I only know of like 1 or 2 schools where they actually have an offer out that late, or a deadline out that late. So just something to be aware of. Most schools, this won't be an issue. So wait, are they just giving signing bonuses here, or just starting? It seems that they just get starting bonuses that they're calling signing bonuses. Yeah, nobody has the 5,000 signing this year. There's only one person on the sheet actually that even has a signing bonus right now, and it is $17,000, and I'm not sure where it came from, and it doesn't seem correct, so I wouldn't trust it. What do master's and PhD students get specifically for hardware engineer? If you don't, I don't know. Check the sheet. I don't know numbers other than what you guys report, so yeah, check the sheet. Masters and PhD typically tend to start at six. PhD almost always starts, not almost always, about 2/3 of PhD start at 60 or higher. About 45% of 40 to 45% of masters start at 60 or higher. But check for those, check the little graph charts on last year's data. We have a good amount from there. So far, we don't have a whole lot this year. Stocks are vested over 3.5 years, and the medium promotion time from 59 to 60 is 1.5 years. What happens when you get promoted? Well, also the same thing that happens with your annual bonus, which is that you'll get some more stock, most likely. And that stock will just be on a separate vesting cycle. Yeah, it just kind of, in general, at most tech companies, you will not ever be able to leave a tech company without saying goodbye to some stock. Don't worry about it, because the company you move to will also give you stock, so don't freak out. But yeah, so in general, they're going to keep you constantly with, oh, but you'll get more stock if you wait another year. Oh, but you'll get more stock if you wait another year. It's one of the ways to keep you working in the same place in a highly competitive workplace. So yeah, they'll just sort of like keep adding on to it. It may be under the same cycle. It may be under a different cycle. I don't know. What happened, or what if you get offers prior to the end of your internship? How can you best leverage this? Hang on to them until the end of your internship, and then you might be willing to drop a subtle hint to your recruiter or your manager that you do have competing offers, and your recruiter might ask for details on them ahead of time, just so that they essentially can kind of like get at least that part of the negotiation out of the way. But if they don't do anything, I wouldn't worry about it. Who is the person / people that have the final proof of your negotiation? I think I already mentioned that. It's kind of weird. Is it possible to start at 61 without previous industry experience? I have never seen it happen, and by never, I literally mean never. The only time that I have heard of it happening was a friend of some random person on one of the Slack channels, and frankly, I don't actually believe it. They did have a they were apparently a previous 3-time intern, and they were a bachelor's though, which definitely puts this as an extraordinary circumstance. I've never, that's the only instance I've ever heard of, so I definitely wouldn't say it's super high. It is possible though for masters and PhD to start at 61 without previous industry experience. It's less than 3% of the time, but it does happen. So just something to be aware of. Are they not giving sign-in bonus? Already covered that. What is the process of changing orgs for the intern to changing orgs? Okay, org changes are right. I mentioned I'd get back to this. So officially, there are no org changes or team changes from your offers this year. In reality, it's already happened a couple of times. It's something that you can ask for. The process is a little less official. Talk to your manager, say, hey, I really like your team, but I kind of want to work on this other thing that, or, on this other part of Microsoft. Do you know anybody there? You got any connects? Hit me up. Something like that. And then usually your manager will have to sort of like push you through like a back way, but it does happen. It's happened a couple of times. So just talk to your manager in general. I believe most Canadian schools don't have such policies. That's what I heard too, but I actually checked a handful of them, and every single one that I checked did have a policy. They just didn't advertise it. So check just in case. I believe, oh, that's the one I already answered. Do you get bonuses with promotion? I don't know. You do get annual bonuses though, and with a promotion you would get a raise. So, sort of. What are the typical bonuses? And do you still get those? You just started. I don't know what that's in reference to. I'll come back to that one. If you were the person that asked that question, just reply to it and it'll update for me. What should we do if we are trying to graduate early but want to start in August next year? Say that you're not graduating early. Cole the Mystery Guy asks, I got offered the standard 59 despite being a master's student from CMU and a work experience of 3 years. Definitely negotiate that. My feedback from my manager was superb. We talked about the offer. Definitely negotiate that. He was willing to negotiate for a 60, but I don't want to be in a situation where they just increase my level and I end up getting less comp than I would have gotten from 59. That will not happen. Don't worry about that. That will not happen. Also, I was given 14 days deadline by the recruiter. The manager was willing to override it, so he definitely wants me in the team. Yeah, then definitely try and negotiate this. 100%. Definitely try and negotiate this. By the way, rip to you. Every time you update it, it pushes it to the bottom of my queue. That's why I didn't get to answer your question. Sorry. You updating it, unfortunately, made it worse. Are you planning to apply for master's? Or I'm planning to apply for a master's in my country in November. Can offers deadline be extended until I get the master's acceptance results? Ask. That's the best I got. Sorry. Does school name help in negotiating? Nah. Not really. From personal experience, no. Not unless you did something like really impressive at that school, like if you're a valedictorian, maybe, but they don't really care about your education as much as they care about your skills. And they're going to have a better idea of your skills from your internship. And this kind of gets into a whole separate tangent of how the college system works and how colleges try and trick you into thinking that, you know, a lot of things matter that actually don't. But I really don't want to get into that during this. So in general, it's not really going to help much. Maybe if your recruiter, but if your recruiter feels like budging on it, definitely mention it. Should we negotiate soccer bonuses one better than the other? Already answered this. Whatever you want. What's the exact calculation for total comp? Take all the bonuses that you would get over the 4 years, sum them, divide by 4, and then add that to your salary. That's it. I don't think you add the 10% annual though. I don't know on that one. Sorry. If your recruiter manager asks, "Are you going to take the offer?" What should I say? Mention, well, I'll definitely be thankful for it, and I'll be checking out my options. Something along those lines. Kind of off topic, but I'm planning to apply a master's in November. Can the offer deadline be extended until I get the master's acceptance results? December, approximately. Good luck. But gonna be honest, I doubt it. Sorry. But definitely mention it to your recruiter and see what happens. What if your recruiter insists on email negotiation? Good. Frankly, but if they insist on email negotiation, then you're stuck with email negotiation. You're not going to be able to force somebody into a call. Sorry. But email negotiation will probably be better for you, so that's fine. Is it okay to negotiate even when they're sent over the paperwork to sign? Yes, as long as you haven't negotiated already. Feel free to take a water break. Thank you. I will when I'm done. Water is for the week. Do we get dividends over stock that are not vested? Yes, I think, but does Microsoft even have a dividend? Oh, thank you. Well, I guess I'm weak. Anyways, do we get dividends over stocks that are not vested? Does Microsoft even do dividends? If they do, you should, yeah. Wait, actually, no, you probably won't. They probably get to keep it. I don't know. I'm not going to try and answer that one. I don't know. Sorry. How do you calculate total comp? Already answered that. Come on. Why do you not? Okay. I want to change teams and I no longer have access to who. How do I see what teams are in my org? Tough. Ask your manager. Email your manager. Ask them about it. But that's going to be a little tough. That's something that you really need to be doing before your internship's over. Sorry. You could also ask any one of these friendly people on this chat. Maybe one of them is willing to help you. Did you say 60s can negotiate salary? Yeah, we've seen it in previous summers occasionally. It's not super common, but it does happen because, as I mentioned, there is a band, and that band is typically based on performance. It's not something I think we've seen negotiated, but we have. Well, no, we have seen it negotiated actually. I don't know why I said that, but it's rare. They seem far more willing to move. As a reminder, when you get promoted, you essentially get a chance to renegotiate your salary anyways. So your salary is actually not going to stick around as long as like your stock vestment cycle will. So just something to be aware of. But yes, 60s in general can negotiate your salary at least a little bit. I got standard 59. Yeah, I think I already answered this question. Yeah, okay. Publish. All right, this person hasn't updated, so I'm just going to publish it. If you are getting your master's before and returning, you start it as an L59. Is it easy to move to L60? Yeah, in general, your master's is going to, or a higher degree is going to help you move up faster. Yeah. At least for the first level. Opinion: should I negotiate high, ask for higher than average, say 59 at 110, 180, 75 with the expectation that they'll counter something lower? Yeah, you can do that. Or you can just, it depends on your strategy. Typically, I would recommend ask for something lower and say, if you can meet this, I will take it and walk away from all my other offers, because 180, unless you did really well, 180 and 75 is very high, at least for what we've seen this summer. I'd knock one of those two down, because you're essentially asking for the highest possible tier that we've seen for 59. So maybe, I don't know. It's kind of your call. But for something like that, you definitely have to be. You'd have to say something along the lines of that you're willing to back out of all other interview processes and just take this one. If they meet it, at least. Let's be real, Microsoft will never be banned from campus recruitment. That's actually not true. That's actually not true. They were banned from from a college in my area. I'm trying to remember what it was. I want to say Smith College, I think, because they didn't meet. It might not have been Smith. There was some college in Massachusetts that was not a zero name that they were actually not able to recruit at. They were told explicitly that they could not have fairs at, or they could not have stands at their career fairs and something. It was actually a big deal. Definitely a good idea. It is definitely a good idea to have a good relationship with the student body. And if they don't have then where it gets around, that's true. But they can be banned. Actually, it has happened. Amazon famously was banned from a bunch of campuses for a year or two. They had to kind of go around apologizing. I remember when that happened. Any guidelines for negotiating when you start at 60? No more than what I've already said in general. Does TC include signing bonus? Yes. What if we want to negotiate specifically emphasizing recurring compensation, salary, stock? As a reminder, stock is not actually a recurring compensation. It expires, or you'll be totally vested after 4 years. So that won't do anything. If you specifically want to focus on salary that hard, I'll be real, you'll be better off just getting promoted faster. But if you really want to focus on salary, then state that you really want to focus on salary, perhaps give some reasons why, and they might be more willing to budge. What makes you say that negotiating to 60 from 59 will not cost you total compensation? It has to do with what those bands were, as I mentioned, right? So 59 doesn't really have a band, and typically the lower part of a level band will overlap with the higher part of a lower band, but because 59s doesn't really have a band, they don't really overlap from what I understand. In general, if you were a high 59 to 60, they'll typically put you at a mid 60. They won't really put you at a low 60. And that's more just from data that I've seen rather than anything else. Oh, finally catching up on these questions. Yay. I heard that stock is over 3.5 years, not 4. That's true. I was saying 4 for Amazon, not Microsoft. And if so, would TC be computed by divided by 3.5? I don't think so. No. You'd also have to prorate your salary and everything else. I don't think so. Waters for the strong. Hashtag hydro homies. Thank you. You don't get dividends until your stock's vest. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. They go from RSUs to common stock. I heard that, but I actually had a recruiter tell me that they do not, that they're not using RSUs. So I think they actually do buy common stock, but I don't really want to. I don't really want to claim that. And Microsoft apparently pays dividends of about 50 cents per share, which is absurdly low, like hilariously low, considering that they have a $200 stock price. But interesting. That's, what is that? That's 0.025%. Well, actually, now that I think about it, that's not that low. Where can I find those templates to negotiate? Google. And what is a good, what's a good use to negotiate if you did not have a competing offer? I think I already mentioned this, but in general, I think in general, what was I saying? I just completely lost my train of thought for a second. Sorry. Oh yeah, if you don't have a competing offer in general, just try and give a target point and say, hey, if you can meet this point, we'll be, I'll walk away from my other offers and accept this offer on the spot, within 24 hours. And they like that one pretty much in general, but give numbers, absolutely give numbers. Person who previously said, what if your recruiter insists on email negotiation? They meant phone. If your recruiter insists on phone negotiation, plan what you're going to say ahead of time. Have a script. You might want to treat it like an interview, sort of like skid it out with a friend or two, have answers to questions that you expect to get asked. Having a script will definitely help you there. So I'm going to dismiss that one now. Oops, I didn't mean to dismiss that. Oh, well. That's published. Wrong one. Being a master's student with prior work experience of 3 years, does it make sense to negotiate more in 59? Yes. So that they figure out. Yeah, no, I would just straight up say, like, due to my previous work experience and my degree, I would appreciate an offer more along these lines, and just say L60, the starting or the standard salary for 60, and then whatever stock and bonus you feel is appropriate. So yeah, absolutely. 3 years prior work experience and a master's student, you should be starting at least 60. You actually possibly have the leverage to maybe go to 61. My recruiter explicitly said in an email that I need to start within 90 days of graduation. I know that it's possible to extend further than that, but how do I do so? Furthermore, let's say, I think I already answered this question, but the long story short of it was, ask your recruiter. Hopefully they say yes. Give reasons, play the COVID card. If you do manage to push it back, then congratulations, that's awesome. Can you turn around and start it? Definitely don't turn around and start earlier within 2 months of your start date, because you got to give them more notice than that. Typically about 2 months is good if you're trying to move up your start date, unless another pandemic level situation happens. Since there is not too much data on level 61, do you have any idea of the average package for 61? Yes, actually. 61 seems to be 133 this year. We do have one data point for 61, and that also matches up with last year's data too, actually. So I think 61 is 133 salary. So that data point combined with the data from last year does actually seem to be accurate. So I'd take a look at that data point. But as a reminder, typically they really look to see previous work experience. Having a master's degree is not generally enough unless you did super well in your internship. Thank you so much for giving me Friday evening to host the session. You're super awesome. Thank you. Oh, thank you. My recruiter said he only has so many bullets on his war chest to advocate for me. Oh, wow. 59 to 60 or increasing comp. I prefer to increase comp, but also 60 would be tight. What do I do? I mean, I can't make your decisions 100% for you, but I would recommend, if you did really, really well, I would recommend trying for 60. Just generically, this may be so the question is, do you actually want to start at 60, or do you just want to get paid more? If you just want to get paid more, just give a higher total compensation value. They will decide whether or not you need to be leveled up to 60 in order to meet that. If you really want the level, then go for the level. At that point, the level is more important than the compensation for you. But it really, you need to make that decision on your own. I heard they take away part of your starting bonus or promotion bonus if you start later than 90 days. I don't think so. No. What they do is they will take away your signing bonus if you quit within, I believe, 2 years of starting. They'll take away part of it. If you quit within the first year, you have to give all of it back. If you quit within the first 2 years, you have to give the second half back, I believe. Where can we find the starting compensation package for each level? The form. That's all I got. Okay, cool. So that's it on the questions. So I will go to the last slide, which is a quick minute to talk about negotiation for different backgrounds. And this is actually something that's fairly important. I feel that needs to be talked about, that often does not get talked about. And I've seen this a lot, which is a lot of people from various backgrounds have said, you know, they're already giving you so much money. How can you possibly be asking for more? Like, that's ridiculous. And my answer, honestly, is this slide. They are a $1.6 trillion company. Do not be afraid for asking for 20K more. That's nothing. Even if you were asking them to double your salary, which I don't recommend doing for reasons I've talked about previously, that's not as much money as, that's not even going to make a dent. So I really would not worry about that. And historically, what we've seen, there's a ton of data, and I've listed some of it on this slide. You know, a lot of people from certain backgrounds, specifically women, minorities, people who come from lower income families, do not negotiate. Please negotiate. You know, they're already telling you that you're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? You're probably worth more, you know? It's definitely at least worth asking, you know? If you've been getting this, you know, good feedback, if you've been getting, you know, high praise from the people that you've been working with, ask for more money. Don't be hesitant. Don't be afraid. Just because it seems like a lot of money already. You know, if they truly could not afford it, they would just say no. And that's kind of the butt of the matter, is they will say no if the answer is actually no. But yeah, that was it. That was my minute. So then questions, I will stay for the next 22 minutes and answer questions. At that point, the person who has my food is getting back and I will be eating. So yeah. Is 59 for 200,000 too much? Or for 59 is 200,000 too much? I would say, yeah. I'd say that's a little high. Yeah. That would definitely be fairly high. I think, well, I don't know. I'd have to do the math, actually. Maybe that's not. What is that math? Oh my God, I guess I'll do it. It's 110,000, or 110 plus 30 is 140, plus, let's say your starting bonus is like 40. That's another, so that's 150. So you'd be asking for 50,000 more on your total compensation annually, meaning that your stock would have to go up by about 200,000, or your bonus would have to go up by 200,000. So that would be a lot. Yeah. I would say that's a little high. Total compensation is going to move up slower in general because of the way the math works. But yeah, so we currently have, so 59 seems to start, again, I don't remember if that actually includes the annual bonuses. If it does, these numbers change. But without the annual bonuses, your total compensation for 59 is about 150. Doing the math from there, you only really want to ask for about 50% more over the 4 years on stock or bonus in general. Well, bonus can sometimes be more because sometimes they just give you ridiculously small bonuses. But for stock in general, you don't want to ask for more than about 50% more. But unless, again, these all have asterisks. It depends on your performance. It depends on your team, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into that too much. But the answer is do the math, figure out if that's too much. Unfortunately, it's hard for me to look at a number and do the math in my head. What if your recruiter insists on a voice call? I think I already kind of covered this, but the best answer I can give is have a script. You know, practice having the phone call like you would for an interview. Practice having the phone call or have answers to questions that you expect your recruiter to ask, because they are good at talking. They will know how to talk. Their job is to talk to people about offers, and they have a vested interest in keeping you, but they also have a vested interest in keeping you at the least amount of money that they can get for you. So in general, yeah, have a script, practice. Same thing you do for an interview. Does being a repeat intern give you a leg up in asking for more? I've seen it, yes. It does seem to give you a leg up in asking for more, specifically if you've been on the same team. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. How do you calculate the total compensation? I've covered this a couple of times, and the sad reality is I'm not 100% clear. But the parts that I do know is you take your annual salary and you add it to the sum of your stock and your bonus divided by 4, because it takes 4 years for everything to. They typically just do 4 years because it takes 3.5 for your stock to vest, and they don't want to divide by 3.5. So you take, and so you take the stock, you take the bonus, you add them, you divide by 4, you take that and you add it to the salary. That is your total compensation. Now there's an asterisk there. Somebody asked earlier if you're supposed to add your 10% annual bonus onto it. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. So if you are supposed to do that, then just add your 10%, multiply by 1.4. But yeah. To those in chat, I've heard it's better to start at 59 and outperform. I've heard this too, and I don't actually agree. There is a thing called career momentum. Essentially, what they're getting at is if you start at 60, you'll be at 60 longer than somebody who starts at 59. And yes, that's true. If you start at 60 and get promoted after a year and a half to 61 versus starting at 59 and getting promoted after half a year to 60 and then a year later to 61, you'll both hit 60 at the same time, but the 59 will have spent less time as a 60. That is true. But it kind of comes down to personal preference. There is such a thing as career momentum. If you feel like you are really going to shoot up the ladder, if you are really, really good, start at 60. Because if you're that good, you'll be able to shoot up to 61 pretty quickly. But if you're just trying to maintain like a steady cadence, it might be better for you to start at 59. But in the actual information that I've gotten, it's not really seeing that that's true. So I would be hesitant with that information. But sure, I'm actually going to write a note. I'm going to answer that before I publish it. How can we get access to the recording? I'm going to link it in the calendar invite. I've been getting consistently good feedback from my manager every week. How should I go about negotiating a 59 on the higher end? How much should I give or take from the higher number from this or previous year? Well, so general inflation is about 2% per year. So if so in general, the offers this year should be about 2% higher than the offers last year. That's just typical. Oh yeah, pro tip for people working in general: if your wage does not go up 2% annually, you are losing money. So because inflation, essentially the rest of the world is going up and you're not. So just something to keep in mind. Very typical at most companies to give a 2% raise every year. I'm not sure if Microsoft does that. They kind of do in the form of their bonuses though. So just something to be aware of. So yeah, I would just do 2%. From the previous year, maybe a little less because of COVID. Thank you. Or clap, 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 clap. Thank you. Clap, 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 clap. Thank you. Anyways, thank you so much for taking the time to share this information with us. You're welcome. Is L59 150/75 the highest is the highest I've seen for 2019? Yeah, that sounds about right. I think the 180 might have been an L60 or like an L61. I don't remember. I think one person got 170,000 or 1,000. Do you mean total compensation or stock? Or I'm not sure, but neat. I heard with the masters you're supposed to get 5,000 more in salary. Is that right? No, not from what I've heard. I hope so. Ooh, that'd be cool. I don't know, though. I have not heard anything about that. So tentatively, I'm going to go with no. Is there a mapping between the number of years of experience and level? Yeah, sort of, kind of. Also depends on the level of experience that you have. In general, if you've got a few years of experience, typically about three or more, you're going to start at least 61. If you had experience in a higher level management role, or you were a very seasoned developer, you could start at a senior. Typically, they don't start people at principals unless you were like very, 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 very good at your previous job. And then above that, you're talking pretty much exclusively management positions, which would mean that you're coming from a very high role at a different company. And that certainly doesn't apply to anybody who's taking an internship right now. Does it depend on the feedback? Does what depend on? The question here is, or does it depend on the feedback of your manager? I don't know what you mean. Sorry. Update that and ask again. Thank you for having this event. You're welcome. Okay, that's all the questions. Nobody has any more questions. So I'll wait like 4 minutes for questions to fill up. If questions don't fill up, I'm gonna go eat. Is there a way to not only have a median, but a box chart or something to see standard? You know, if you want to help me with the sheet, please DM me. I would love somebody to help me make these formulas. Unfortunately, it's just a lot to do on my own. But the question was, is there a way to not only have a median, but a box chart or something to see the standard deviations on the sheet? I'm sure there is. And if I get around to it, I will implement it. Okay. So yeah, that's it on questions. So I think that's it. Wait like a minute or so for anybody who's furiously typing. What's the average total compensation for an L60? I don't know. Check the sheet. Sorry. Somebody says thanks. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Great. I'm going to hop off then. If you guys really have some burning questions, feel free to DM me on Teams. Until then, good luck with the rest of your internships. For those of you who are not in internships, good luck negotiating. Take it and run with it. You got this. Woo! Bye.